Hello and welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from TalkTV. So pop the kettle on, this is the Royal Tea. I'm Sarah Hewson. Preparations for King Charles III's coronation at Westminster Abbey have entered their final stages, with the chairs arranged and the jewels polished. Celebrities, charity fundraisers and priests have been revealing their invitations. But there are also some more controversial RSVPs. We'll be finding out who. Joining me to discuss all that and more are royal commentator and TalkTV regular Afua Hagan, royal commentator Rupert Bell and Royally Us podcast host Christine Ross. The late Queen realised that the Duke of York's Newsnight interview was a disaster before it dawned on him. That's according to Emily Maitlis, who conducted the infamous interview. Maitlis makes the claim in a new Channel 4 documentary about the Duke of York. Afua, how did the Queen find out how bad it was before her son, who was actually sitting in the room?
Well, that's a good question. So the Queen had a look at the transcripts from the interview and realised that, I can't sweat, and I was at a Pizza Express, and everything else that was in that disastrous interview was a disaster. And it still beggars belief to me that even after Prince Andrew gave this interview, even with hindsight, even with a couple of days or an hour to sit down and think about what he said, why he thought it was a good idea for that to go out. But nevertheless, it did. And the consequences of it, the ramifications are still being felt today. But that documentary, the Channel 4 documentary, Andrew the Problem Prince, I think it's called, is going to be not necessarily explosive, but it will really dig into, the nuts and bolts of that interview, how it came together and how it played out. If the Queen is saying, not sure this is a good idea, Andrew, but he deems it fit to go ahead, that tells you everything you need to know about his ill judgment. And then, look at the friends he kept and everything else. It just beggars belief.
I mean, ill judgment that he thought it was okay to do it in the first place, but also that then, having done the interview, Rupert, he thought it was great. He invited Emily Maitlis to join them for cinema night at the Palace. And she made a hasty exit.
I couldn't believe that. His arrogance is his issue, and it always has been throughout his life. And even when I was at school with him, he always had a self-confidence that he probably believed in his position. And even when it came to this, he thought this was his way out of the predicament, but actually the stupidity of it. And unfortunately, that, if he's going to read the room like that, it says something about him, that he thought perhaps he was trying to protect his daughter, trying to get on the front foot. That's one of the reasons he might have thought to it, because it must be hard when you're reading everything about what you're supposed to have got up to, and you're the members of his daughters. You're thinking, Dad, what are you up to? And that's the human side of it. So maybe he thought by doing this, he could turn the narrative around. All he succeeded in doing was digging an even deeper hole for him.
That's certainly one of the theories that Emily Maitlis has said she's considered afterwards while questioning why on earth he would do it. Princess Beatrice was in on some of the meetings, wasn't she, Christine? Before the interview, she just announced her engagement. She was getting married. This was certainly casting a very dark shadow over his children.
Absolutely. And I think that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie are assets for the royal family. But since these incidents with their father, they've had to sort of take a step back. And I'm sure Princess Beatrice was in the room. She's very savvy. She's worked in the real world, outside of this royal bubble. She must have been shaking her head, wondering what on earth was going on. Now that we're hearing more and more about what happened during this interview, there must have been so many people standing there saying, I don't think this is a good idea. And yet he pressed on.
And yet no one stopped it.
And no one was able to stop it.
Even after he'd done the interview. Yeah. Those involved in the interview said that they were kind of waiting and bracing themselves for a call to say, you know what, let's can this. We're going to talk about this a lot because, as you say, the documentary is coming out. We've also got the Netflix film Scoop, which is coming out, which will portray all of this in all its gruesome detail. So we will be coming back to that, no doubt, here on The Royal Tea. Let's talk about the coronation, though. 3 identical copies of the Coronation Bible have been made ahead of May the 6th. One will be presented to the King during the service. The other 2 will go into the archives of Westminster Abbey and Oxford University Press. Meanwhile, the repair shops Jay Blades and former Coronation Street actor Tracy Brabin are among the lucky people who've been showing off their invitations to King Charles's coronation. Charity fundraisers and a priest have also taken to social media to announce they have been selected to attend. We've spoken about it before, but how important is it, do you think, Afua, that when we look at that congregation in Westminster Abbey, we see people who really deserve to be there because of the work that they've done, not the family that they were born into?
I think that's super important, actually, and it sets out, or King Charles III is setting out what kind of king he wants to be, you know, quote unquote man of the people. And I think it's brilliant that you have people who have, you know, raised money for charity. I think there's a boy who camped out for 3 years straight and raised thousands of pounds for charity. He's going, I think his mum and dad are going. Mum was crying when she got the invitation. It's amazing that these kind of people are being recognised for their work, that it's not just about aristocracy and people like that going, you know, that probably, I think about half the congregation are going to be everyday people that have done incredible things. And of course, it's great that Jay Blades is going to be there. Remember that episode of the repair shop?
I love that
The two of them were a very unlikely duo together. The comedy duo we didn't know that we needed. So I think it's great that he's going as well. I love that the coronation is reflecting all these different types of people. They could have given them a bit more notice though, because imagine you got your invitation this week. You've only got 2 weeks to find an outfit, get your hair cut, find some shoes,
Book a hotel.
book a hotel, do it all.
Practicalities.
You
I
know?
think they'd go out the window if you've got an invitation to the coronation.
I do. It's so interesting. Even when we look at the concert, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the performers all have links to King Charles's charities or work he's done in the past. Charity work and people working for the people are really at the forefront of this coronation. And even when you look back to King Charles's Christmas message, he used that message to thank people around the United Kingdom who are giving back to people within the United Kingdom. There's so much emphasis on the people in this, and it's really a modernization.
Yeah.
I think it's all about making sure that the country feel included. If we did see, and like I think I mentioned last week, one or two of my friends who haven't received invitations, a couple of dukes and a lord, but they understand, because obviously from 8,000 down to 2,000, and I think that's what he does want. It's that sense that it's for all of us, and he is just the head of state, not just of a few aristos, but actually he is the king of this United Kingdom, and it's very important that the congregation reflects that. And as you say, that Jay Blades one, I sat there blubbing my eyes out afterwards. I mean, it shows, you know, the importance of what the king does with his charity work.
But also
when you see him front line.
Immersed and engrossed he is in it, how much it means to them. When you saw him looking at the preservation of those heritage crafts, this is a real passion project for him.
Well, and that's what he's done. Whether, you know, we know his environmental issues, and, you know, we used to say hugging a tree and all that, but it meant everything means something to him.
Yeah, giving young people an
chance.
opportunity.
And I know the Prince's Trust, everyone who comes into contact with him says he really gives his time. And I think that's the important thing about what is going to happen at the coronation, that we see a reflection of his view of Britain, which is not just stuck going to nice little castles or houses. It actually is far more down to earth than that.
What about some of the more eye-raising invitations? President Xi Jinping of China is not going to be attending the King's coronation, but in what is considered by many as a deliberately provocative move, he's going to send the Vice President, the man who spearheaded the crackdown on protests in Hong Kong. Afua, what do you make of this? I mean, the invitation going to China in the first place, and then China's decision to send the deputy.
It's a difficult one because whatever you do, you're going to send a message. So if you don't invite China, that sends a very strong message that you don't think they should be included and that they shouldn't be part of the celebration. And if you do, then does that mean that you agree with the policies that they have, the decisions that they've made? Not necessarily. So it's a difficult one. It's kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. And I think China, yes, you know, they're also playing their own game. You know, let's send someone less important, but has done things which are controversial, to sit there at the coronation and see how you feel about that, Britain.
But also it's a diplomatic thing. There are one or two countries who we don't have diplomatic ties with. Russia, North Korea, they haven't been invited, but we do still have diplomatic ties with China, whether
And
you
trade
agree,
relations.
and trade relations. And so they're in a difficult situation, and clearly China at the moment is creating ripples around the world in all sorts of directions. So it is a difficult one, but it may not be the Charles's decision. It's actually his role as head of state. That's what it comes to. That's why he's been invited. And actually you go, well, because President Xi, I think he was invited to the funeral, sent a number 2 along. So it's not a surprise, but clearly with our links to Hong Kong, those anti-democratic crackdown puts a spotlight on it again.
Rupert, what about Sinn Féin Vice President Michelle ONeill accepting an invitation, an Irish Republican attending the coronation of the British monarch?
Well, as she is the leader of the Stormont Dragoon, is not sitting at the moment, I don't think, but she is representing the people of Northern Ireland. It does reflect the change in the country. I mean, I served in Northern Ireland in the early 80s, and sure, many of the people who became high-profile politicians, we had them on our most wanted list. So it makes for a sea change when you think from 1980s to where we are now. The country has changed dramatically, but there is still going to be people saying they shouldn't be there because they've got Republican sentiments, but she is the elected head of state. And people have been making a joke about she likes a good cocktail bill and a bit of canapes, but I think there's more to it than that, and I think we just have to accept it for what it is, whether you agree or disagree.
Princess Anne has been handed a starring role by the King for his coronation in honour of her years of unwavering loyalty. It is expected that the Princess Royal will feature in the procession as the prestigious Gold Stick in Waiting, a position entrusted with the personal safety of the sovereign. Christine, this reflects the closeness of that relationship and the bond that they have, but also how important Princess Anne is in supporting her brother.
Absolutely. They've really become quite a pair over the years. She's unfailingly supportive of him and of the royal family and the work they do. She consistently, year after year, racks up the most engagements, sort of neck and neck with King Charles. And she's hugely dedicated to her position in the royal family. She never complains, she never explains. She really keeps her head down and gets the work done. And this is a huge honor. It dates back to Tudor times, sort of someone flanking the king as a form of protection, which of course is a moot point in this day and age. But it's a huge sign of gratitude from the king that she is there in that role.
And in terms of, she'll be there with the members of the military as well, Rupert. And how is she viewed? With respect?
Total respect, because she just gets on with the job. Everything she's done, the way she even, her children, they weren't given a title. She really gets it. And I think the most important thing for the king is she's a sounding board. And that just quietly, she's a couple of years younger, and okay, in the early years there may be a little bit of jealousy because the king always felt that Anne was favoured by Prince Philip more than he was, but different because she was a get-up and was riding and winning.
Much more like her father in terms of her approach to life.
But I think now he needs that sort of level-headed, no-nonsense approach because, we do know the king can sometimes go off at a little bit of a tangent here and there, but with her sort of down-to-earth, right, let's get stuck in attitude, it's just what he needs. Along with Camilla, you put the two together, he's got some powerful advice coming in his direction.
Two very strong women there supporting him. Let's talk about one of the other potential stars of the coronation, certainly of the Jubilee celebrations, Prince Louis. He has turned 5, and an image of him sitting in a wheelbarrow was released to mark his birthday. It was a charming photo of Kate pushing him around in a wheelbarrow through their garden. What did you think of it?
I mean, it was a really cute picture, wasn't it? He's a very good looking little boy at 5 years old. You definitely see his personality coming through in that picture, certainly. And yeah, really cute. And definitely, we also had the picture of the Queen with her great-grandchildren that the Princess of Wales took, another really gorgeous image as well.
And that was released to mark what would have been the late Queen's 97th birthday.
Yeah, and it was a gorgeous picture. Really, really lovely.
Everybody
looked
gorgeous
so
picture,
casual.
But it received more attention from for those that weren't
Yes,
in
of
the
course,
image?
because Lilibet and Archie weren't in the picture. Well, Archie certainly wasn't in the picture. And I think it's a shame, but also let's reflect on who was there. You know, the narrative that comes out every single time there's a picture of someone doing something or someone doing something else, it's look who wasn't there and look who's not been invited and look when this picture was taken. You know, that picture was about marking the Queen on her 97th birthday.
And it was taken in Balmoral, the family had all gathered there.
Absolutely. So let's focus on how much Zara Tindall's kids look like her. My goodness.
Amazing.
It was like you photocopied her face and put it on the kids' faces. It was a beautiful picture. Let's focus on who was there. Lilibet and Archie weren't there. That's a shame. But the Queen was there with her great-grandchildren, and it was a gorgeous picture.
I think what's really interesting is that we've seen the same pose, same sofa with the great-grandchildren before, which maybe suggests that there's an annual tradition of this.
Yeah.
Are there a dozen or half a dozen of these amazing photos of the Queen with the children as they're born, as they get older? You know, the sofa gets more and more full.
My gran used to do the same thing,
And
actually.
isn't that so special? But it's very relatable, isn't it? How
Yeah.
many of us sat on a sofa with our grandmothers?
And
had
just
that?
imagine trying to coordinate.
And because those Tyndall children, they're lively. So,
Well, you see, Lucas Tyndall has a little snack, and I think a lot of us with young children recognize the packaging.
Yes.
You know?
I see them at horse trials running around, and you see Mike trying, where's my children? So I think to try and to get them in that photograph going, sit still just for 5 seconds,
Yeah, and
please.
look at the camera, everybody.
I also wonder if they had an awareness when they were in the presence of the Queen, gang
Yeah,
to
yeah.
them. But you know, you've got to get on with it and you've got to behave.
Yeah.
Now, anyway, the King has rebuffed an attempt by Heathrow to name Terminal 5 after him. Buckingham Palace is said to have called in ministers to turn down the airport's offer without causing embarrassment, as the King was said to be reluctant to accept. Heathrow had wanted to mark the coronation by renaming the terminal after the King, almost a decade after Terminal 2 was renamed the Queen's Terminal in 2014. Why do we think that Charles wasn't keen on this one, I fear?
Well, I would like to think it's because of his passion for environmental issues, and he probably thought to himself, it's not a very good look if I have a massive airport terminal named after me. So I think he probably thought, you know what, this doesn't really align with things that I believe in. And Heathrow have decided instead that they're going to hand out luggage tags between the 1st and the 10th of May for people passing through Heathrow Terminal 5. So you can imagine, you know, them sitting in this board meeting like, we're going to name the whole terminal after the King. King says no, luggage tags. It's a bit of a step down, isn't it? Bit of a step down. I mean, and if you even get your luggage in the first place from Terminal 5, because there is going to be some strikes. So good luck with that.
Mean, I don't know the numbers of how many people are expected to fly in, but nothing like 1953 when I was reading they had 6 ships in the Thames to provide thousands of extra beds, and people were asked to rent out rooms to enable people to come and stay in London for the occasion.
Because I think there wasn't, the hotel infrastructure that we have now, and that the change and this. When you look at the pictures of that coronation, the number of people who were lining the 5-mile procession, we're not going to see anything like that. But I do know people who are coming from overseas who want to be there. If they can get through Terminal 5 happily enough, I'm sure they're not giving it
with
too
the
much.
luggage tag.
With their luggage tag.
Yes.
But I can see why the King said no to this, because actually air travel does create problems for the royal family, all members of the royal family, whether working or non-working. So I think it's a convenient way to say it's not, as you said, not on my agenda, and I think we just park it in the no thank you, but very kind of you to ask.
Royal fans have lashed out at Ticketmaster for leaving them out of pocket on travel and hotel bookings after they were wrongly told they had tickets to the King's coronation concert. Now, this is the fault of Ticketmaster, but it's not a great look for the coronation event, is it? And I'm going to come to you, Christine, because you were one of those fans.
I was, and I arranged a babysitter. And about in the time it took me to tell my husband we were going and text the babysitter for their availability. I clicked on the link and they were gone.
So tell me what happened. You got an email saying you'd got tickets.
Yeah, so we received an email from Ticketmaster. It says, congratulations, you've been successful in your ballot for your 2 tickets. And remember, if you did apply for the tickets, you had to give your passport information. It was quite a lengthy application process. So to be told you've received your tickets, that was very exciting. And the wording was extremely confusing. If you look at reports, it says you've been successful in your ballot, you've been allocated 2 tickets, you have to claim them by, I think it was the 27th of April, so I thought I had lots of time, and click here to claim them. But when everyone clicked to claim them, it turned out there was only a limited number of tickets that could be claimed. And so many people were left really disappointed. And again, you know, it's disappointing, but on the whole, it's just a bad look.
Yeah,
it's a
because
bad look.
it wasn't meant to be first come, first served, was
correct.
it? My understanding is that the initial ballot wasn't done on a first come, first served basis, and then there was a small quantity of tickets that were then people were given the opportunity to apply for, but didn't know.
Correct. And no, it was very, very confusing. And the tickets were actually, they disappeared in minutes. I mean, within 3 or 4 minutes.
So
I think
fastest finger first.
Exactly.
Yes.
But this is the thing, is that the email says
Yes.
you have been successful. So you would think that
It's so
I've got time.
disappointing. You think, I've got these tickets.
Yeah, and you think you've secured them. You know, I've got time to text the babysitter, buy something from ASOS, phone the husband, phone the mum, do all these things.
And I do feel really badly. I wasn't out any money for this, but there were people who took to social media to say, this is really wrong. I'm out a hotel room. I've booked train tickets. These things can be non-refundable. And that's hugely, I mean, that's really insult to injury, or injury to insult almost, the financial implications of that very, very confusing email.
Prince Harry's legal battle with the tabloid press returned to the High Court this week. He says his brother secretly accepted a very large sum in compensation from the Sun in 2020. Will the timing of this, Rupert, given we are just days away from the coronation now, and this revelation that was made in his statement to the court, without the royal family knowing, how is that going to impact familial relations, do you think?
It's made it even colder, I'm pretty sure. And it's interesting, not only has he been making coming out from the court case, but you've seen them surface again in a very high profile way, the old kissogram moment. And, you know, suddenly we're seeing them, they're making sure that they're not forgotten, even though he may be coming over. So there will be more eye rolling once again coming within the royal household, and thinking, well, you know, this is it's taking away from his father. This is his father's big day. Yet now, with just over a week to go, we're talking all about the subplot. Okay, these court cases may be very serious.
He can't control
No.
the date of his court appearances, can he? But it is just more about that breakdown of communication and relations, isn't it?
It really, really is. And you're absolutely right to say, I mean, if the relationship between the brothers wasn't at an all-time low, it certainly is now. And Prince William, the Prince of Wales, and the Princess of Wales will be apoplectic with rage that this has come out at all, never mind the timing that it has come out. So yes, it doesn't do anything to help their relationship at all.
But I do have to say, you know, in reference, so much of this story was about Prince Harry's grievance with something that the Prince of Wales did. And as he's in court doing this, the Prince and Princess of Wales are out doing so much work
That
this
very
week.
day, the Prince of
Yes.
Wales was attending the Anzac ceremony,
Exactly.
wasn't he?
He was at Anzac Day in his military uniform doing something very respectful, very royal even. And there's Harry complaining yet again.
I'm afraid he just doesn't know when to shut up at times. Okay, the court case, as you say, we knew that was happening. He's able to put his defence, but he just seems to want to create further division. And I don't know what he thinks he's going to get out of it. Does he want to repair damage or not? Clearly, at this stage, no.
Well, meanwhile, as Rupert alluded to, back in LA, Harry and Meghan attended an LA Lakers basketball game and appeared on the famous Kiss Cam. What did we make of it, Christine? Meghan dodged the kiss, did she? Or was she embarrassed? I don't know.
I think that they do have to think very differently from most people at the Lakers game, that this is going to end up on the headlines, no matter what they do. And it did.
You've got to be ready for the kiss cam if you're there.
Oh, you do. But Harry and Meghan kissing on the kiss cam, what sort of headline is that going to generate? You know, but then them not kissing on the kiss cam still generates a headline. There is no winning for those two, honestly. But it looked like a really fun day out. Some people suggested it was a date night, but it looks like they were there with some of their
It looked like a company, team building.
So it was
type
a team
thing.
building thing. It is a very American night out. That's very much something that going to a ball game. That's very American. So I think Harry's really leaning into that American culture.
This is another case of damned if you do, damned if you don't, isn't it?
100%.
I mean, I saw some speculation on social media that, the relationship must be over because she didn't kiss him. I mean, nonsense.
Christine, you've nailed it.
Yeah.
What headline would that have been if they had kissed on the kiss cam? It would have been them flaunting their love, and it means that, she's having an affair. You know what I mean? Like all of that. And then because they didn't kiss on the kiss cam, they've divorced. And she was only there for the cameras. Do you know what I mean? Whatever they
were still
do.
snuggled up together, weren't they?
I don't think she swerved this kiss at all. I mean, it looked like they had some chemistry, and they looked like they had a really fun night out.
I think he may have whispered a joke, and she was actually laughing.
Yeah.
But this micro-analysis of everything that they do.
Every single thing, what they're wearing. When the picture came out when she introduced Miss Anne Harriman at TEDx, and everybody was like, "Ooh, she's lightened her hair. She's had this done. She's had this done." Then the one that
they described it as a Montecito makeover.
Exactly.
Didn't they? She just styled her hair differently.
Exactly.
I mean, how many makeovers have you had
About
lately?
50. Yeah. Honestly, I don't even recognise myself. And the thing that wound me up the most is the reach that some people went to is that she's trying to look like Kate Middleton, and it's like you can't just change your look. She's brushed her hair. She's put on some makeup. And if she's had a makeover, had plastic surgery, and she wants to look like Kate Middleton. Honestly, it's like when we were talking about the picture. People will just reach for anything, and it's hilarious, actually.
And it is where I feel real sympathy, because you just can't do anything
at all
without it being
If
analysed.
you were on a kiss cam
and
situation,
overanalyzed.
Sarah, and you suddenly found it, what would you do?
It's a good question.
I wouldn't have dodged the kiss, actually. I think the headlines are probably harder
But it depends
if you
who
do
you were
dodge
sitting
it.
next to, Sarah.
Well, I was assuming you meant my husband.
Well, that could
Never know.
Yeah,
I did mean your husband, very definitely.
I think my British husband would absolutely never. I mean, that would just be horrifying to him.
Well, I'm married to an American, and I tell you what,
She'd have gone in for it.
But I wouldn't. I'd be doing the backing away a la Meghan.
I don't think my husband would have gotten in for it, actually. Yeah.
And you just sort of leant back as if you were going to dodge it.
You never know where the kiss cam comes from.
Yeah, you don't know when it's coming, but you must assume that it is. Christine, you talked about members of the royal family out getting on with their duty this week. One of them, the Duchess of Edinburgh. She visited Kent Refugee Action Charity, and she was really getting stuck in. And in one moment, she drew the family tree on the board. Tell us about it.
I think this was really lovely. She was sort of meeting with staff and volunteers, but also people who were served by the refugee centre. They were learning about family trees and sort of tracking lineage and things like that. And so she went up to the board and illustrated her family tree, really starting with Queen Elizabeth II. And it was sweet and yet macabre. She put a sad face for Queen Elizabeth II, as it's very sad that she has since died, but illustrated sort of the Queen's children, including her own husband.
She called him Ed, didn't she?
She did call him Ed, which is, they're such a lovely couple. I wonder what goes on behind closed doors. They seem really charming. They would do the kiss cam. Yes, they would. Sophie would be very up for it, I think. Yeah. But the Duchess of Edinburgh also illustrated King Charles with a KC, and then down to William, the Prince of Wales. And again, it's this conversation of, well, she didn't include Harry, and it's like, yes, but she didn't include anyone else's children either. This was really an illustration of sort of the lineage of the royal family, the line of succession, if you will, and it was just a quick moment, I think, just getting stuck in with these people who are in terrible circumstances. This must be a really difficult phase in their life, but probably a special moment for them, having the Duchess of Edinburgh sharing this lesson with them.
She's an asset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we talked about Princess Anne, but we have to say Sophie as well.
Because she's come from a PR background and everything. She's and knows how to read the room, and she can get on with it. And that's why I think she's such a valued member. And she will be having a busy time, doing all these visits, because she gives 100% when she does.
Absolutely. I think we've really seen a shift. Before, the coverage of then the Earl and Countess of Wessex was very minimal. Yeah. Since this shift in the monarchy, they've really seen more of a spotlight, and I think it could not be more valuable. They're huge assets. They're charming. They're very down to earth, very relatable,
very loyal.
Very, very loyal.
A life-sized bust of the King has been made from more than 17 litres of melted Celebrations chocolates amid the build-up to the coronation. Rupert, we got you to sample the coronation quiche last week and you weren't happy. Would this be more to your taste?
What I'm worried about is if you've got to eat it, what do you do? I mean,
What do
where
you-
do
what
you
do you
start?
do?
Where
Do
do you
you
start?
bite off the
Where
head?
do you start? And that's the problem
I would
because
go with
it's
an
whatever
ear.
it's treason.
ear.
Isn't it?
Yeah, snap off an ear, and then hopefully it's hollow, and then you can just nibble your way right around his
But
head.
it's treason.
I've thought about
It
it.
is treason. I mean, I was thinking
I have thought about it.
beautifully made, all that chocolate, but actually, if you're
It's just for looking at, isn't it?
It's-
Surely.
well, no, I think it must be good because it was not any old chocolate that's been used. And
Celebrations are good,
yeah,
you know.
But if you imagine you took it to a school and you started and started smashing it to pieces.
It's like when my children have these beautiful Easter eggs and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
just
Yeah. But great craftsmanship. It's a really good replica of him, but too good to eat, I think, probably. And I don't want to have my head chopped off.
The
Or smashed
I
it.
think the creativity is wonderful though. I also saw a crown made out of Scrabble pieces
Oh,
as
wow.
well, which was amazing. But people are starting to get into the spirit of
Yeah.
it. It's been a bit slow. Maybe. But one good thing is, and I'm going to be very British here and talk about the weather, it's cold, so at least the chocolate's not going to melt.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
It's so detailed. You even have really intricate details on the medals that he's wearing.
that are made of actual celebrations of the non-melted ones on the medals and on his buttons.
Who was paid to do this? I mean, who took the time, you know?
Whose idea is it? Someone, it's the
these
same
marketing
people that
meetings.
sat in
These
the
marketing
the
meetings.
How long
Heathrow
did it take?
meeting. That was
Yeah,
the meeting
this is
afterwards. Yeah.
Well, that is all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Afua, Rupert and Christine. If you want to join in with the debate, make sure you leave a comment. We will be back next week with all of the latest on the royal family. Next week, of course, just days away from the coronation. We hope you can join us and we will see you then.